Thank you for tuning in to watch our Invest Greater Fort Lauderdale Leadership Summit. You're about to watch panel number 3, Real Capital. Why and how the banking real estate market relationship in Broward needs to evolve going forward. Enjoy.
All right, so this is the final stretch, bottom of the ninth. You're still here, so hopefully we make it interesting. My name is David. It's David Coddington. I'm the SVP of Business Development for the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, the official public-private partnership for economic development with Broward County. So I want to just, before we jump in, and we got a good panel, Mayor Grant won't be able to make it, unfortunately, from Lauderdale. So just the three of us. But you heard earlier about the power of partnerships, right? So I want to just share how incredibly unique this area is on that piece. So a few years back, we were working a headquarter deal with Sealand. Sealand was being brought back to one of the biggest freighter companies, sea freighter companies in the world, from a part of Maersk. And they were looking at Virginia, they were looking at New Jersey, they were going to put this new headquarters somewhere. It was going to be either Americas, South America, Central America, North America, HQ. So he came down, Craig Magat, the CEO at the time, he came down and we met with him, and then he came back with his whole exec team. And they had people moving down. So they need to meet people about the school. So they need to meet the school board. They need to meet the port. They need to meet the airport and about all the, all the flights, what's going on with that piece. It just goes down the list. So we had Sandy's office was with us. So we closed it out that day on a water taxi, Bill Walker's water taxi. And there, I knew we had him because one of the guys was like, "Oh, I'm calling my wife. We're going along the Intercoastal." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful." I'm like, "This deal is done." But the thing about it, which really made the deal happen, was he was so impressed, the CEO was so impressed that by just contacting one of us, in this case, contacting the Alliance, that pulled together all those partnerships. And he mentioned, he goes, "You know what? Who was the governor of New Jersey at the time? Christie, thank you. It was Christie. And he's like, I'm going to call Governor Christie and let him know this is how you do economic development. The fact that you were able to bring everybody together and everybody's egos were set aside. We didn't have my thing, I'm more important than yours, or this or that, or whatever. Everybody worked together. They came, they put their HQ here. It was an awesome deal. They've now been kind of gone back into the Maersk side of things. But anyways, those power partnerships are really incredible. And one other thing, Ron Moffat on the AI piece, we applied for a training grant for CareerSource Broward, try and better understand how we could utilize that. So I would encourage you to do that. All right, let's just jump into it. So, all right, so we'll start with this piece. All right, so welcome to the third round, blah, 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 blah. That's what I'm supposed to say. I didn't say it. So let's open it up here. To open up the convention, what would each of your assessments be for Broward County's real estate development? Namely, which segments do you see the greatest demand or need? And to follow up, how have recent market changes affected those developments? Brett, I was talking to Jay Weaver earlier, sorry. Jay is also with Moss. Sorry, Brett. Brett, you guys are doing all sorts of incredible things, not just here in Florida.
So, yeah, I'll answer that. From a development standpoint, we all live in a beautiful community because the opportunities here are immense, and the opportunities are not like that everywhere else in this country. And so sometimes we kid around at Moss is we play in several markets. We play in South Florida, we play in Tampa, in Dallas, and in Hawaii. And so we kid each other and say, hey, we're really strategic. We picked markets that were growing. And the truth is that it's a little bit of luck. And so I always tell people, if you really enjoy the weather in South Florida, you enjoy living in South Florida, and you like construction and development, this is the best place to be. And one thing I would say is that it's dynamic. It was only 5 years ago in March of 2020 that I remember the executive team sitting down and saying, oh boy, we have 20 active projects in South Florida. What are we going to do if construction is not considered an essential business? And so we put together 3 different plans. What happens if all of a sudden all 20 jobs shut down? Or what happens if a few jobs shut down? And so you can imagine what was the conversations that were taking place at that executive level when you're going to affect so many different lives of people that are working in this community. Fortunately, you guys can fast forward and say, it's a beautiful thing that the state of Florida considered construction an essential business. And only 2 jobs were affected, and they were only affected for 30 days, thank God. But also I would say this, is that it wasn't long ago, it was in 2008, right before the big recession, that I was in downtown Miami, and I looked up at all the tower cranes that were taking place. And I said to myself, wow, Miami and South Florida is going to be the next New York. Now, one thing I was thinking 30, 40 years that it was going to be the next New York. And then in March of 2020, when you're sitting there and saying, oh, we got COVID and this is going to be crazy, the unfathomable happened is that all three markets, and when I say three markets in South Florida, Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach, have doubled since COVID. And why is that? Because a lot of net worth moved in here. And so one thing I would say is the people that have grown up here in Romney, I don't know where you are, but you said you grew up here. One thing, I was born and raised here. The one slight on South Florida was always there weren't sustainable educated jobs. And jobs change markets. And what happened when the net worth came in here, businesses came in here. And businesses flood in here and they create educated jobs. And with educated jobs comes a sustainable community. And so the good thing is that a lot of people were born and raised here, got educated somewhere else, and they didn't come back here. And now the opportunity is that you can be educated somewhere else and you can come back to a lot of educated jobs. And so the community needs to be diverse, both in the public and the private, to be a healthy community. And I couldn't be more privileged to lead South Florida from Moss Construction right here in this marketplace because it's a beautiful community.
Yes, thank you.
And I want to come back to something to that. Broward's absolutely on fire with the increase in the population, job creation, and all the inbound migration. It really is, it's done amazing things over the past few years. But one of the things we really need to focus on is workforce housing. That's a sector along with education, industrial. So those are the things that they need to keep developing most definitely here in this area.
I think too, well, I don't think I know. The workforce housing piece is it's not just us, it's any urban area across the country. They're all struggling. And very good comment on the quality of the workforce and the jobs and the education piece. Awesome. All right, next, let's see. As the real estate success increasingly hinges on strong public-private alignment, can you share an example of a collaboration or financing structure that's helping projects get across the finish line despite today's headwinds? Eduardo, let's go with you. You're on the banking side. What do you think?
Sure. I got to tell you, one of the things that a topic that has been discussed many times is the relationships and the private and public partnerships. Without those combinations and, throwing a pitch in for the bank, without the three of those, things can't get done. And a good example of that is a mini housing project that we ended up financing where the city contributed the land. There was some soft funding right in the middle, and we came in with the senior piece on financing, and that was able to hit the investor thresholds and also solve for some issues on the housing side. So good example of public-private partnerships, relationships in general, and banking all tied in.
Brett, what do you think?
Well, the public-private partnerships, they're not new. And, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, maybe the only public-private projects that were happening were roadways. And, but there's several venues that we happen to be a part of that are public-private, and they're venues that we all visit. Marlins Ballpark, the Panthers Arena, the Inter Miami right here in Fort Lauderdale. And these are public-private partnerships that benefit the community. And the one thing I really like about where these public-private partnerships are going is that they're now moving into really working on what is the biggest risk in this region, and that's affordability. And this needs to be a community for everybody, and it needs to be an affordable community for everybody. And so where the impact is taking place today is that this community has been fueled by apartments over the last 12 years. I tell people that if you're a developer doing apartments over the last 12 years, it's like shooting a fish in a barrel. Now, I will tell you this, 4 years ago, I took all of the apartments off of our WIP, our backlog, because when the dynamics of the market changed, insurance rates went up, construction costs went up, interest rates went up, and rent stabilized. There was no longer a viable sector in development. And when you don't have a viable sector to bring affordable housing, it causes a problem in the community. Fortunately, this is where the public has really stepped up. And so what we're doing in Fort Lauderdale, what we're doing in the city of Hollywood, relative to providing subsidies to developers to encourage affordable living and creating the private to take the risk relative to creating different apartment sectors in a marketplace that doesn't work from a pro forma standpoint is a beautiful thing. And so I couldn't be happy how the relationships have taken place with both the public and private to meet the needs of what our biggest risk is in this community.
You know, on that affordable housing piece, that's one of the main focuses of the county commission, Sandy's office, Maribel. You know, that's a huge piece of what, you know, is a primary focus, and to be able to handle those jobs, right? You know, the Alliance goes after high wage, high skilled jobs, but you know, what about those jobs that are at 45 or 35 or 45 that we're trying to get them? They get training grants and then maybe they're at 60, but still, that's a real challenge if we don't have that affordable housing. So the county commission, give them credit, they've really gone after that in a big way. All right, Eduardo, here's one on the banking side. With capital becoming more selective, how is City National evaluating deals in Broward, and what kinds of real estate projects still meet that threshold for lending?
So one of the things the bank really sees things that not any transaction is a one size fits all. We're really focusing on the strong sponsorships, making sure that liquidity is there, making sure the track record's there, and that we're aligned on the strategy overall. Some of the things we're really focusing on financing are multifamily, industrial, and grocery anchored retail shopping centers.
So here's a follow-up. How is city's relationship with real estate players in Broward evolving, and what are key factors in those partnerships? And before you answer, one of the things that we're very fortunate is that the Alliance has a relationship with the Atlanta Fed and through Miami, and so does the Chamber. The Chamber has the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber's got the Council of Economic Advisors, which I serve on, which is a great action team or committee. And we're fortunate that the Fed comes down here like once a quarter and talks about it. And they talk about how South Florida is a bubble, kind of like what you were saying before. This is a bubble of, you know, when they look at it, if there is a recession or some piece, we're usually one of the last ones to go in or one of the first ones to come out. But again, going back to how is the city's relationship with real estate players in Broward evolving, and what are key factors in those partnerships?
So look, one of the most important things in these partnerships is trust and transparency, is making sure you have to start having these conversations early on. And the partnerships along with the city is that they're providing additional grants, CRA, DODs, and allowing faster processing for permitting to get things moving, you know, at a faster pace.
Yeah, the permitting thing is gigantic. So Florida Economic Development Council, FEDC, that's the organization that brings economic development organizations together from across the state. I was just at our board meeting. I'm the incoming chair at our board meeting yesterday, along with Select Florida. And permitting is in every single EDO, is how fast can they get that done? Incentive piece is great, and we're, you know, and Cindy mentioned before, and it's awesome that we have our own local, but the permitting piece is huge. DK Mink, there you are. This woman is just like she can't, you want to have a fun conversation, talk to her about permitting. Not really, but you know, but she loves it. Well, thank God you do it for us, DK. It's awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so Brett, let's look into this. You know what? I'm going to ask this question, but when I ask think about the diversification you guys. I mean, I don't know if people realize you mentioned the markets, but how big you guys are in solar. And you guys just took a whole new office building over in the Citrix campus and so forth. So maybe you mentioned a little bit about all the different things that you mentioned Marlin Stadium. And I mean, it's amazing what you guys, the breadth of what Moss does. So here's the question. Amid changes in the market in recent years, how has Moss leaned into its diversification strategy to continue supporting the growth in Broward County?
Well, I started with sectors change. And so the strategy is not just today on diversification, but from a commercial construction sector, because sectors change, that you have to be diversified, no different than your financial advisor says, be diversified. And so, you know, at Moss, from the onset, we said, hey, we're a startup company 20 years ago. And so from zero to now we're a $3.6 billion company that primarily started right here in South Florida. It did start right here in Fort Lauderdale. And at the beginning, it was, let's be diversified. Let's do public work. Let's do private work. Let's not get just caught up in just apartment work, which was the easy stuff. And so what I say we do is we do anything and everything except we don't do single family homes because we don't want to deal with the emotional homeowner. And we don't do federal work because we don't want to deal with the bureaucracy of the federal government. But aside from that, we do small projects, mid-sized projects, and large projects, and public projects, and private projects. And we're at the seaports, and we're at the airports. And so, you know, that diversification is beautiful when sectors change, but it also is beautiful when you can impact the communities that you play in relative to the different sectors that have different needs. And so It's a great, like I said, this is a great place to do commercial construction.
It's touch base, like I mentioned the building in Citrus. So COVID, you mentioned COVID, and to your point, the fact that you were made a necessity in reference to the industries is huge, because where would we be if everything just stopped like that? But we went through a couple of brokers asked Todd Hull, our VP of Business Development, to go through South Bonsignor and asked us to go through the building over there, and you guys hadn't taken it yet, and it looked like just somebody ran in the building and said, "Get out now," because they just left their pens, pictures, family things, toys, Hot Wheels on the desk, whatever you like, whatever little trinket you have. TVs are still on. The lunchroom was like plates on the table, like they just ran out and never came back. It was a bit like a ghost town. But you guys took that whole building. How many square feet is that?
It's 5 floors, 30,000, so let's do the math there, what's that, 150,000. So
Let's
we
get the
didn't
math.
take the whole building at once. I see Tracy Miller over there, and so over 20 years you evolve, and one thing is the Miller Construction was a great partner to us at the onset. We actually started our company on the second floor of Miller Construction's office with a joint venture 20 years ago. And so, but as we evolved and the demand increased here in South Florida, we ended up finding a home in Wilton Manors. And but our solar, the demand for energy today is so high. Everyone has devices, everyone is using a lot of power, everyone's using the iCloud. And so you talked about the issues of affordability here in this community. Energy is a big issue in this country and the world. And so we had the opportunity to shift into solar, which allowed us to double our business now relative to a utility scale solar across the country. So long story short is Citrix, through a relationship, someone said, "Hey, Citrix is leaving. Why don't you go over there and take a look at that so you can move the solar department over there?" So we took 2 floors over there with our solar company, and then we quickly realized, like, this is great over here. And it's they got the lockers were still in place, and and it was built out nice. And then eventually, just in January this year, we moved the construction offices there as well. So we're all in one place.
So you mentioned about the solar. If to that piece, again, we are fortunate that FPL is our power supplier. If you're not aware of what's going on in other markets, the fact that they're so powerful as far as they have the leverage of being part of Next Era. When I talked to some other fellow economic development folks in other states, they're waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years to be able to develop a project because they cannot get the equipment. We did a project called Centavia that they did about 60,000 square foot expansion in Hollywood. Is Mayor Levy still here? Yep. There you are. And the city of Hollywood has been great with them, and just everything from the get-go, from they did their first building. But in order to get that done, we have weekly calls with FPL. I don't know any other EDO that was able to do that with their power company. So we're very fortunate, and the solar piece is a huge piece. All right, we got a couple minutes left. I'm going to jump right into this last thing as we look into the crystal ball or for the future. Looking ahead, what's one innovation in financing, partnerships, and project structuring that you believe would redefine development in Broward over the next 5 years? That's a big question, and why? Eduardo, you want to jump in there? Or are you still thinking?
You can go. I'm still thinking.
Yeah, me too.
I'll jump into it. A lot of it was said in these previous 2 panels. At the end of the day, when everyone is working together on a win-win, and the public is not just in the public silo, and the private's not in the private silo, you have wins. And so one thing is, an unsolicited proposal was something new probably 10, 15 years ago. And now it's becoming something that people are more comfortable with. Different jurisdictions are more comfortable with it. The private's more comfortable with it. And so when you have trust and you have collaboration, then you have creativity. And when you have creativity, you have opportunities. And so the one thing I would say is that these unsolicited proposals of the private coming into the public, and land is one big piece, and the public has a lot of land, whether it be the school board, whether it be the hospital board, whether it be the different jurisdictions, is that land is at a premium. And when you can take that off the table, these performers work. And when the private comes in and takes the risk, then it creates opportunities for our community. And so you heard Mayor Levy talk about what the city of Hollywood is doing. I'm born and raised in Hollywood. I couldn't be more proud of what Mayor Levy has done in Hollywood, and how they have moved leaps and bounds relative to really embracing the private and creating opportunities for our community.
Completely agree with that. That partnership is crucial, and without it today, I don't think many projects can get done because hitting those investment thresholds. But for me, it's really three takeaways. You know, the flexibility is new currency, creativity is a must. The public-private partnerships, as Brett was just mentioning, and strong relationships, you know, with your bank, with the city, with your developers. Those are an absolute must to get things done these days.
I'll jump in just a couple thoughts and then I think we are ready to close. The on the public-private partnership and so forth and the unsolicited bids and if you haven't been out to the fort yet, is Mayor Trentalles here? Or he's closing or he'll be here any moment. Anyways, so
You're gonna be closing.
I guess I might be. Hey, how you doing? I'm not mayor for the day. Hey, so the Ford pickleball piece, they took, you know, and no matter what you put out there, there's going to be somebody saying, Bob Swinall, our CEO, likes to talk about cave people, citizens against virtually everything, right? And it's just, so this part of Snyder Park was basically a seaweed dump, right? They'd take the seaweed from the beach, dump it there, and would just stay there for years, and that would be it. And so now you have a creative entrepreneur that sold his business for, a bunch of money. So he's like, I can't retire and play golf every day. What am I going to do? Finds out, starts playing pickleball and go, wow, this is really awesome. Sees the movement in it. Anyways, creates that, approaches the city and then says like, what would you think about this? And so the city did a great deal with them. Tracy Miller built that thing. It's awesome. If you haven't been out there, it's incredible. So Brad Tuckman, the CEO, the founder of it, he had that vision, he put it out there, and there was pushback. No, you're going to ruin the park. Dude, it's a dump for seaweed. Really? Now you go out there and look at it. He's got companies coming in from all over. He's talking to cruise lines about coming there. I mean, it'll be in the Guinness World Book of Records for the largest specific pickleball court. I have that right, Tracy? Right? So they built the Guinness World Book of Records building over there. Anyways, but if you haven't got out there, it's awesome. But that goes back to unsolicited piece and working public-private partnerships and so forth. And there's several others in different cities. And Mayor Levy talked about the golf course piece too. So I think time is up. Are we, or do you want to take a question? You guys got a question for our panel? Anybody?
The filibuster.
The filibuster. Wow. All right. Well, I appreciate you signing. Yeah. Oh, Basil, you got a question?
Yeah, sure. As you look out in South Florida region, what would be a good bet in terms of construction?
All right. So your question is, as you look in South Florida region, what would be a good bet on construction?
Yeah, and moving forward, because as you mentioned, the parking piece is probably played out and not necessarily a good investment. Although I think that micro apartments might be a good thing and will take care of workforce management.
What's that?
So, I'll take it. One thing I would say is, I'm just a contractor, I'm not a developer, because I don't have the appetite for the risk developers take. And so, no, but if I put on my developer hat, I would say, understand your market and understand timing is everything from a developer standpoint. And I only know this because I work for them, is that, and I have a saying is that if you're a developer long enough, you could be really rich, but you'll be very poor because you can never predict timing. And so at the end of the day, you may have a lot of wins, but if you stay in it long enough, you're going to have a loss because you can't predict COVID or you can't predict something else from a global perspective. And so for me personally, I would advise you don't go into development. But I would say if you're in South Florida, is that if you look at just the data, is a lot of net worth migrating into this area. And when that kind of net worth migrates, one sector that happened was very high-end condos. The market fueled by very high-end condos. But what happens when that net worth moves in here and the jobs follow it because their companies move here, is that the rest of it follows. Airports, hospitality, apartments will come back. Your public is going to be fueled because there's more jobs here and there's more people here. And so offices, you haven't seen offices, but we built several office buildings in Palm Beach. And guess who's going to be the recipient? I was sharing this with Kareem, is that, Stephen Ross did what he did in Palm Beach post-COVID. Miami did what they did post-COVID. The recipient's going to be Broward County because Broward County sits between here. The developers that came from Chicago and the developers that came from New York don't really understand how South Florida works. people live in Broward and they work in Dade County. People live in Broward and they work in Palm Beach. Is that the three counties play a bigger part than what outside developers realize. And so I would say this is that if you live here, which most of you do, I assume, in Broward County, is that there's going to be some good times in Broward County relative to what took place in the adjacent county.
And also to that point, we actually had both 350, 450 La Sols just was purchased a few weeks ago, a month or two ago. Larry Elbaum from Bradford Allen out of Chicago came down and his company purchased those. They're going to invest significant amount of money into both those buildings. And, you know, you start to look at what that is. And I asked him, like, why here? To your point, you know, it was like, well, you look what happened in Palm Beach and you look what happened in Miami and you look at the rates. They're getting over $100 a square foot in an office in Palm Beach. It's more than what you're getting in Miami, which is amazing. And we here are a bargain right now. And so that's where they see that coming in, like, okay, that's a market I can tap into because we're going to raise that market piece. And so it's being recognized. And Eduardo, last piece, as you look in, we talked about on the banking side, and I mentioned the Fed Reserve. How about you guys in other markets? How does this market specifically, is it unique to you guys versus other markets that you guys bank in, or what's your perspective on that?
It's a market share that we will continue growing. You know, we probably have about 7% market share in Miami-Dade County, 1% in Broward, and less than 1% around the area in Palm Beach. So truly want to spend time here working with developers, investors, with the city to continue just growing our footprint, our brand, and continue to help.
Well, I think that, Ryan, I think that cuts it for us at 10:30. We good? So thank you very much for staying. I appreciate you not walking out and even what we had to say.